The following webinar is presented by the E-Extension Farm Energy Community of Practice at extension.org and the University of Nebraska Lincoln Extension.
Good morning, everyone. I really appreciate your interest in bioenergy crop. Today, I would like to talk about some, improving sustainability of the bioenergy feedstock production by diversifying feedstock options using various native grass. I want to talk about beneficial biofuel feedstock and importance of the biodiversity and role of the perennial grass in diversity. And talk about how important to have a dedicated energy crop on marginal land. After that, I will talk about our research finding in Illinois, all across the nation too, actually, and biomass potential of some of native prairie grass and importance of management practice of the perennial dedicated energy crop. And I will spend a lot of time on prairie cordgrass as a promising dedicated energy crop. And at the end, I'd like to add some aspect of the using conservation reserve program land, which is everybody knows the CRP land for one of the feedstock research. Just like any other, production agriculture, biomass yield is the most important aspect for the crop production and also feedstock production. Just like here, you see the sorghum grown in central Illinois is about over 15, 16 feet tall, 3 decades tall. It has a lot of biomass. Our research is really focusing on biomass yield. However, we know some other aspects also very important for the dedicated energy crop production. The bioenergy feedstock production should, production practices should satisfy all three aspects: food, energy, and environment. To be a beneficial biofeedstock should not compete with the food production directly or indirectly. Also, beneficial biofuel feedstock has lower life cycle greenhouse gas emission than any other traditional fossil fuel. And with this recent study, scientific community identified five species of feedstock research, just like the sustainably harvested crop residue, and then also sustainably harvested wood and forest residue, and also without competing the land for the food production, do the double cropping also can have some feedstock production, and also some municipal solid waste that will be some source for the bioenergy feedstock. And the last thing is most important, critical. We're going to talk about today is a perennial plant grown, especially growing on marginal land. Let's think about our prairie. I'm changing topic a little bit from the feedstock to our prairie, but in the beginning, there was only land. And then slowly, prairie vegetation came across the landscape. Doesn't matter soil type. In some wetland, some hill sloped area, the flat ground, and then this vegetation built world-based soil. And we are currently producing food for the world from this our prairie land soil. However, we understand there is some soil and land is. I'm sorry, I'm not used to this clicking thing. We using this nice ground, good soil, prime cropland for the corn and soybean production, any other food crop. But we understand that there is some soil and land are very susceptible for the environmental consequence with the conventional agricultural practice. So like this kind of sloped area, erosion is constantly a problem, and also some wet area also problem for not having good food crop production. Those the area we can use for the dedicated energy crop production. Those the diversity will promote the biodiversity on the landscape will promote the productivity and the sustainability of our production agriculture, and will meet achieve the goal of the food and feed, fiber, and fuel production. We understand there's no single silver bullet for the sustainable production in our agriculture. We have to work with many different options and feedstock and crop. And with that thing to come back, brought us to working on the perennial crop. Perennial energy crop grown on degraded land abandoned from agricultural use will minimize the competition with the food crop production and also maximize the food producer resource through the renovation of those unproductive land. And obviously, we can have a lot of benefit of the environmental. But everybody understands the growing on those crops on marginal land is not easy because those marginal land typically associated with either too dry or too wet. Also, sometimes not common in Midwest, but some portion of the United States and also some portion of the world has a severe issue with the soil salinity. And then temperature is also another factor. I just want to spend a little more time on this slide. In 2012, I think many of you remember April 16, we had the very late drought, which is and that was the spring of the warmer spring, and a lot of corn and soybean already planted, and also a lot of perennial grass already about 1 foot tall. As you see, this was the miscanthus plot. Miscanthus was almost 1 foot tall, and the prairie cordgrass is above 1 foot tall. Then April 16, we have a 4-hour period of a 27-degree timing period, and then miscanthus didn't make it because of that cold temperature. But cordgrass was just fine, and that's another kind of nice thing about some of prairie cordgrass. They call the color. In the middle picture here, I'm showing this is one of the cornfields in central Illinois contaminated by the soil, the salt water, brine water coming from oil well activity. And basically, you not see any kind of vegetation and edge of the field, and also you see stunted the growth of the corn plant. Just like that, this kind of marginal land typically may always have some kind of issue for the crop production. But some of the prairie grass can handle very well this type of abiotic stress. That's why we like to use this bioenergy crop and minimize the environmental consequence on those type of marginal land for the crop using the bioenergy feedstock production. We have many different grass or full plants grown on this this land area. And as you see here, prairie cordgrass and a lot of different vegetation grown in prairie setting, and also this is a restorative prairie and a lot of different vegetation grown in the kind of marginal land type of soil. And this is the prairie cordgrass I'm going to talk to today. So some of the selected population. This is the switchgrass. Everybody knows the switchgrass grown in central Illinois, lowland type of switchgrass. So there's the Indian grass grown in prairie setting, and also this is some of my advanced line of Biofuels grown in our energy farm. All this kind of grass can be grown in many different type of environment, and their performance is very different based on soil type. With that, and I came to Illinois in 2008, and 2009 worked with Dr. Rob Mitchell and Dr. Emily Heaton in Iowa. We established the native grass evaluation trial. In that trial, we have over 30 different monoculture of the Indian grass and Biofuel stem and switchgrass, and then also we have all 2-3-way mixture of this grass and different cultivar. We evaluated it for 3 years, and this is the 2013 will be the 4th year we're going to harvest the biomass. As you see, each species and cultivar response to the year is very different. And basically, year means the precipitation is the most important factor. And see here, Indian grass, the warrior and chief Indian grass developed it in Nebraska. In 2009 was a very good year, and because we have a perennial moisture precipitations up to the August, and then obviously Indian grass did very well. We had a high yield. But 2011 and 12, which is the 2012 was the year in terms of the drought in Illinois, yield wasn't very much compared to the 5 tons per hectare versus almost 17, 18 tons per hectare in 2010. With Diclofenac the pretty well crossed the year better than in response to the precipitation was less across the year, but overall yield is lower. But gold mine bonanza was developed in Nebraska too. It's not, they're not well adapted in this environment. But some of our native Diclofenac and DK Illinois does well across the 3 year, but obviously still we have less yield in 2012. Canyon switchgrass and caving rock switchgrass, everybody knows the canyon switchgrass is from Oklahoma lowland types of switchgrass. Does very well, perform very well across all 3 years. Doesn't matter precipitation, we achieve the pretty consistent high biomass yield. Native caving rock switchgrass in Illinois, obviously it's unlimited type lower biomass yield than canyon. And move on to the mixture, you see two-way mixture and three-way mixture and many different types of species was involved. And obviously 2010 Indian grass had a good favor in overall biomass, and then those mixture system has a high yield in 2010. The same as in 2011, the drought condition affected pretty significantly in overall biomass yield. But as you look comparing this mixture system versus the monoculture here, actually does better across the 3 year under the different precipitation. And we also compare the miscanthus in that plot. Miscanthus does pretty well and across the 3 different precipitation year, but yield was not as high as reported from other studies, but it was very comparable to the canyon switchgrass. As you see, we have many different options of using the perennial grass, and depends on precipitation, and then I think it depends on land type. Unfortunately, we didn't test this one in many different soil types, but since we have one more site in Nebraska and Iowa, combine all those 3 information may be very useful in terms of, helping the producer selecting species in cultivar. And another important thing is the cultivar selection. I think everybody already heard about a lot of different options we have in terms of the switchgrass cultivar. In Illinois, we didn't have much information, and I planted many different types of the switchgrass cultivar, including northern type, Illinois origin and unlanded type, and then southern origin and lowland type too. And I planted this in 2009 and started harvesting biomass in 2010, 11, and 12. We'll do again this year. As you see, the lowland type, there is some other discussion about whether lowland type switchgrass adapted in this Midwestern, especially in central Illinois, which is we are sitting in the 40-degree north latitude. But based on my experience the last 4 years, Canada doesn't have any problem in terms of the cold adaptation. So I see the Alamo has some issue, and yield is kind of continuously going down. And worst year was the 2012 and 13 winter. We have a severe, even though winter was very mild, but we didn't have much snow cover, and then Alamo lost a lot of plant density based on winter kill, and I'm expecting much lower yield in 2013 and in Alamo. But Canada didn't have any problem. I'm expecting pretty good yield again this year. We might have more than in 2012 biomass yield, because 2012, considering the drought, this year we have very good moisture until July. And it seems like late July, August, the drought didn't affect the switchgrass yield much. Comparing to this lowland, any other worms, the upland type switchgrass cannot compete with the lowland switchgrass type for the biomass. Obviously, the northern type, Nebraska 20 and sunburst coming from Nebraska and South Dakota, doesn't perform very well. Especially we have a lot of rust and disease associated, and olive flowering doesn't make much biomass, and doesn't make any sense planting these northern types in for the biomass production. And once you have a selection of the corresponding species, and always the establishment issue, I guess Dr. Rob Mitchell and a lot of scientists always talk about a lot of technology and skill for the establishment of the native grass. But we also tested in 3 dominant species like switchgrass and Indian grass and Biofuels stem here. I think we know how to establish switchgrass, Indian grass, and Biofuels stem since Nebraska and Iowa we worked really hard on, and we have a lot of technology and herbicide adoption, weed control, and seed source selection thing. And as long as you have a good seed source selection and also weed control, establishment is not any more issue in perennial side. One example I'm showing here, we planted this switchgrass and Biofuels stem and Indian grass in 2012 May. Considering drought situation 2000 May, we have a very good stand in September 17. This picture was taken in September 17, 2012. We don't have much problem. We have a beautiful stand. But we didn't harvest the biomass because of the late drought. It really affected overall biomass yield, and we did not harvest. If we had some moisture in July and August, we could have some good biomass in first year too. And the most critical thing for the good establishment is successful establishment, good seed source, and weed management. There's many options for the weed control. I think we can have pretty good success of the establishment of the perennial grass, especially those 3 main tall grass. And also the management issue. Since I came here, Illinois, I established the K-Knock switchgrass in 2009, and we did some fertility study. There's a lot of question about the fertility, whether switchgrass need or nitrogen or not. But obviously, it's a plant. Plant needs some type, minimum amount of soil fertilization for the maximum biomass production. But important thing is not cross all the environment. It's the same amount of nitrogen or some other fertilizer. It depends on soil type. Very important to have site-specific management. One example showing here, Urbana, we had a high soil fertility, and then we don't see any response, especially for the overwintering or after killing frost harvesting. You will not see much response above 50 pounds of nitrogen. Versus the Brownstown soil, which was the Brownstown is a very wet soil. There's a lot of spring leaching issue there, and then we have a pretty good response all the way up to over 150 pounds of nitrogen. And also in this study, we tested slow release the polymer coated urea nitrogen also tested it because of this site is always the issue with the water logging in the early spring. Actually, this is Brownstown is the only site has a pretty good response of those slow release the urea nitrogen. But other location, Urbana and the 4 other locations doesn't have any benefit from using slow release the urea nitrogen. With that, I'm going to move on to the prairie cordgrass. Prairie cordgrass, I believe we have some benefit to using as a feedstock production in some type of situation, very specific type of situation. This is one of my cordgrass. One of my cordgrass are developing at the Cultivar in Illinois right now. But since many of you may not know it, or I guess many of you now know about the prairie cordgrass, I want to give some introduction about the prairie cordgrass. Prairie cordgrass is tall, rhizomatous perennial worm-feeding grass, and as you see, this is the Savoy Prairie cordgrass. It's right now under the processing of the patenting, and it will be in market pretty soon. As you see, it's above 8 feet tall, or sometimes 9 to 10 feet tall, and very rhizomatous, very tall. It has high yield potential. And also, this prairie cordgrass is native to the North America, and as you see in the map, USDA plant database map, and you see all the way northern Canada, you can find the prairie cordgrass, the most northerly distributed C4 grass. Well adapted, very cold environment and very long, short growing season area. Also, found in marsh, wet meadow, parcel, as in generally found in those areas, but well adapted in both the wet and dry prairie. It has a very extensive rhizome system, and then with this extensive rhizome system, you always see whenever you see native prairie cordgrass population, see the fewer stands because of this rhizome system and very strong rhizome system is to virtually eliminate all other vegetation. Excuse me. Once you have a prairie cordgrass establishment done, you're not going to have much weed problem because of this rhizome system and because of this cordgrass that starts very early in the season. Another uniqueness about the prairie cordgrass is high tolerance for the soil salinity and early season waterlog the soil. And we compared the prairie cordgrass under the various salt situation. And then as you see the control situation, the switchgrass and prairie cordgrass is just fine, but under the 150 millimole sodium chloride, which is I think about 500 millimole sodium chloride is about ocean salt water strength. The 150 millimole is about above EC15, which is no crop can survive on and under this high EC condition. As you see, prairie cordgrass still performing very well and developing new tiller versus switchgrass cannot survive. One mechanism prairie cordgrass can survive this high salt situation is salt exclusion by the salt gland. As you see here in leaf surface and sheath surface, they have a salt gland, and when they have too much salt accumulate, and then they start to pumping out those salts, through this salt gland, and you can see the salt crystal. You can find the salt crystals leaf surface and then leaf sheath. This is the mechanism they can survive under the high salt situation. Another thing about the uniqueness of the prairie cordgrass is I talked earlier a little bit about the cold stress tolerance. And in one example I'm showing here in 2011, March 23rd. But in central Illinois, March 23rd is still pretty cold. No other ones-in grass cannot start. But in general, in typical year, under the average condition of temperature, and cordgrass started growing in mid-March in Illinois. And another surprising thing is actually in that day I found many from my nursery I found many 1 week old seedlings, which is they germinate already in the mid-March. It's amazing how they can handle this low temperature. In the mid-March, our average temperature is around 65, which is that's daytime temperature, max temperature, which is no other ones in grass can handle this low temperature. They cannot do any photosynthesis activity. And obviously, with this cold stress tolerance, they can start very early. They can have a much longer growing season, and that means they can accumulate more biomass and then have a high yield potential. I mean, with those other, all those cold stress tolerance, tolerance in waterlogged soil, and salt tolerance, doesn't matter those stress tolerance. If they don't produce much biomass, you may not interested in using it as a dedicated energy crop. But the preliminary yield estimate evaluation tells us very promising about using prairie cordgrass for the biomass production. We compared some of the Illinois population to the native Kavanaugh switchgrass in Illinois and then Canada switchgrass, lowland type Canada switchgrass. And we also included some of the northern types of prairie cordgrass. Obviously, the same as in switchgrass, northern type switchgrass, the cordgrass doesn't perform very well in Illinois. With your reference, the Red River is the prairie cordgrass, the current only available variety in the market right now. But hopefully soon some of our native, prairie cordgrass are available in the market pretty soon. Anyway. As you see in here, Savoy Prairie cordgrass, originally I collected from Savoy, Illinois, which is nearby the Champaign, Illinois. It's very comparable to the high-yielding Canyon switchgrass in central Illinois. We are expecting now, I'm thinking maybe it's 7-8 tons per acre biomass across the environmental we're going to have, and once this Savoy cordgrass is released. Whenever you see the prairie cordgrass, it's not very impressive in terms of the tiller density and the height. Sometimes it's very tall, but sometimes switchgrass can be taller than cordgrass, and always switchgrass has more tiller density. But actually, when you look at individual tiller, it's very different. Individual tiller is much thicker. As you see here, individual cordgrass tiller is much thicker and strong. And also switchgrass is, you see it's a hollow stem. But cordgrass, and typically most of them have a very solid stem and very solid, very dense solid stem. It has a tiller weight is much heavier than switchgrass. And even though cordgrass has a less tiller density, and still they can produce a lot of biomass with a dense solid stem. And it's coming from, it's not like other switchgrass or bigelow stem. Bigelow stem looks like a solid stem, but it's not. It's all inside the material. It's a pith. It's not, doesn't have much weight. But cordgrass has through the cross section, you see the bundaceous cell, which is the high cellulose and the lignin, and which is it's because of and heavy mass in tiller. And compared to the cordgrass, the miscanthus is just like other switchgrass. It's a hollow stem. It looks like a solid, but it is all pith material. Eventually, they drop. It's becoming a hollow. As we understand, and we knew, cordgrass has some potential for the bioenergy feedstock, and we started collecting germplasm of the prairie cordgrass from all the native environment of the United States. We traveled a pretty lot of mileage, and we collect a whole total of 160 natural population of the prairie cordgrass, and all this prairie cordgrass right now is planted in our nursery. We are evaluating, and then we are making some improvement and selection and improvement for the high biomass feedstock production right now. And here's a couple of examples. You can see how tall is the prairie cordgrass and what's the potential for the biomass production. This is one of my favorite germplasm, which is collected from Champaign, Illinois. Now I named it Savoy, and has a very good yield potential and very tall. It's already seed head is cut, but still it's about 9 feet tall. It's above 10 feet tall in often. And also 17116, it's also collected in central Illinois, but this is out of Florida. It's a very interesting plant, but it has potential. Also 17109, it's also collected in Champaign County, but the difference between the 17109 and Savoy is more rhizomatous type, but 17109 has a high tiller density and it's more kind of bunch type. But both has a very good potential for the biomass yield. Other than all the Illinois clone, this is 2106 coming from Kansas. This one has a very big stem and thick tiller and a very few tiller, but it's because of the stem diameter and produces a lot of biomass too. This is the Savoy Prairie cordgrass. Right now, it's under the patenting process right now. Actually, this year is 2015. We have a big production this year, seed production this year. We may be able to start to release some seed from the next spring 2015. This is the original Savoy Prairie cordgrass clone picture, and this is my crossing block of the seed production site of the Savoy Prairie cordgrass. As you see, this the picture was taken in May 15, already almost 5 feet tall. Some of them actually almost 6 feet tall of the prairie highlight in May 15. This is the beauty of the prairie cordgrass. They start to sow early in the season, and they add lots of biomass. Okay, and one issue with the prairie cordgrass as a biomass production. is a slow germination. I know the fast how important fast germination have a good successful establishment in perennial grass. But as you see, this is the whole seed of the prairie cultivar. It has a pretty good structure, and also this lemma and palea covering the seed, carry out the seed. It has a very hydrophobic nature, and they don't get much moisture, and they don't want to germinate. I think we can learn from natural habitat because they grow on nearby the water, and they drop the seed in the fall. They can germinate any time because of perennial moisture. But they don't want to do that because of the winter's coming. They know the winter's coming. That's why they seed coat is a very hydrophobic nature, and they don't get water much. And that causes some dormancy issue and slow germination issue. And typically, in ideal condition, even in the petri condition, growth chamber condition, their germination can take more than 20 days. And obviously, in the field situation, it can take more than a month, and then cause a lot of weed issue and a lot, you can imagine a lot of slow how bad is the slow establishment issue thing. But we found, and we can remove this. My technician Alan Parrish accidentally found he can remove this seed coat, lemma and palea with mechanically, and without damaging the caryopsis, we can separate out this caryopsis. As you see in the graph, you can see two different population seeds we tested, and it's 15 days reached about 70% in one population, 70% germination reach, and all the way down 25 days, it's still not that much, only 80% the field seed germination. Another seed source of 17109 we tested, even in the 20-day period, we still get less than, around the 10% seed germination with the whole seed. Versus caryopsis, we tested it. They start to germinate within 2 days, and always reached about 10 days, they reached above 80% in germination in both populations. Now we understand that the planting directly like a weed, caryopsis only, and speed up the germination, and we can have a very successful establishment. And in 2012, we planted the first and the caryopsis, and then we have a very successful establishment and very consistent. And I'm sorry, this picture should be moved up a little bit, and we take it from the after planting, and then a couple months later, and then summertime we take the picture, and we have a perfect establishment with the caryopsis planting. I think, and right now we are with this kind of a situation. We are testing prairie cordgrass under the many different stress environment right now. This is one of the sites we are testing the different cordgrass and under the salt contaminated situation. This site is located in the middle of the cornfield. Last year when I took the picture was in the soybean field, but this is right there. Here, right next to somewhere around here, you can see the oil well here, and then from the oil well, a lot of salt water came out and then contaminated the middle of the cornfield, and this soil is above 20. Basically, farmers said he haven't seen any kind of vegetation grown over 40 years. And we transplanted the prairie cultivar in 2011, and this was a 2012 planting. And then we took it in the fall of 2012, as you see the prairie cultivar is growing very well in this very salty environment. And we planted some switchgrass, two different types of switchgrass in this environment, and caving rock and a canal. Caving rock switchgrasses didn't make it, so none of we didn't find any cordgrass, the switchgrass, caving rock switchgrass survived, but canal switchgrass survived, and not all, but we have a pretty good portion of the canal switchgrass survived. And we realized the canal switchgrass also has some tolerance in salt too. And also, we are testing this prairie cordgrass in various wet conditions. This is second spring wet soil, and in springtime, always the waterlogging is the issue in some portion of Illinois. But cordgrass they like this kind of wet soil. And also, this is a brownstone wet soil. Cordgrass. This picture was taken in early April. Cordgrass is standing in water, so no problem. And also, we are testing in prairie cordgrass in some waterway. This is, I think, Ohio River. I'm not sure about it, but it's the eastern Illinois side. It's by the you see the river going through this side, and always the issue in the springtime. Flooding is always the issue. This farmer is losing a lot of soil from the water pathway and from the middle of the corn. And then he asked me to can plant in cordgrass to start the soil up too, and we're testing there too. And also we are testing in the prairie cordgrass and mine reclamation. This is limestone in quarry. They have a lot of land under this kind of a situation, and we tested various different grass, and then we found out switchgrass and then cordgrass does do very well and under this situation. And the last slide I'm showing here is we are testing prairie cordgrass in Pecos, Texas, West Texas, which is very dry area, but the agriculture is all under irrigation in West Texas. But a lot of acres are going out of the production because of water is becoming sodium, and there's a lot of sodium in there in the water, irrigation water. We tested this water and EC is above 4, and then even cotton and peanut doesn't make it through it, and a lot of agriculture and going out of the production right now. But we had the source of the working with the University of Texas A&M. We planted the prairie cordgrass, and then we irrigated in salt water. And then that was planted in 2012. This picture was taken at end of the season of 2012. And then this year, all the grass is growing very well. We are going to evaluate the biomass yield of the 20 different prairie cordgrass. With that, I want to move on to some of the CRP Conservation Reserve Program land. And I've been working with the CRP land for the last 5 years across the nation. Main objective of this research would like to, whether CRP can be a source for the feedstock production or not. The reason I want to add this 2 slides of CRP research because we keep losing the CRP acres since 2009, the 2007 year commodity price went up really high. And then until 2007, we have over 33 million acres of the CRP. 2009 until 33 million acre CRP land we had, but now in 2013 it's down to 27 million acre, and we keep losing this CRP land. But the problem is those CRP land have some issues, soil erosion and then some water issue. And if you keep changing these CRP lands, the crop production might cause a more environmental issue. That's why we want to, make sure this CRP land is stay for the biomass product, and stay as a CRP land. But at the same time, government and farmer want to make some money out of this land. That's why we start looking at this CRP land for the sustainable feedstock production. And we tested the yield, biomass yield coming from the CRP land over 5 years, from 2008 to 12. Obviously, the yield was not as much as we wanted. But another issue associated with the lower yield in Kansas and Oklahoma, as you know, 2010, 11, 12 wasn't a very good year in terms of the precipitation. That's why we have a very minimum biomass yield production. But we found some nitrogen can help the biomass production. And also another big thing about the CRP land, as you understand, the CRP land was established for the conservation, was not for the biomass production. If you can renovate some CRP land with a high yielding biomass, we can have a more biomass production in those land without, maintaining CRP benefits. That's another thing I like to keep working on area of the CRP land, using this CRP land for the sustainable biomass production. That way we can have some, native grass or in a grassland and on benefit, provide the wildlife habitat and soil conservation too. It's important we need to pay attention on CRP land using it as, feedstock production resource. I think that's all I have, and I really at the beginning of my presentation, I showed some very rough graph, the figure of my kind of a biodiversity in within agro-ecosystem, but this is same USA Bioenergy actually developed a fancy graph, and then same as mine, but it's much more diversified. It depends on the soil. It depends on the soil type, and it depends on landscape. We can accommodate a lot of different, grass and traditional crop, and we can maximize the productivity and sustainability of our production agriculture by diversifying many different crops. I think this is very important for our future generation. I think everybody has to be working on this, promoting biodiversity in within our agro ecosystem. With that, I'd like to acknowledge all my supporting agents, USDA, San USA Bioenergy. I work with many people in San USA Bioenergy project, and U.S. Department of Energy and Energy Bioscience Institute through the BP and Sun Grant Initiative, and an Illinois Department of Transportation.
This webinar has been brought to you by the Farm Energy Community of Practice and the University of Nebraska-Lincoln Extension. For more information, go to farmenergymedia.extension.org.